Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to shoot a review of the LGT NeoPixel core. Now the saber that you see here in front of you is not what I'm reviewing. This is a nylus saber that I 3D printed, so this is PLA plastic. The blade here is a Bendu Armory NeoPixel blade. What I'm reviewing you actually can't see right now, but I'll show it to you in the course of this video, and that's inside here. That's the LGT Universal Chassis Eco Board with NeoPixel. Now that's a whole lot. Let me break it down a little bit and cover first off though what LGT is. So I haven't reviewed LGT before, and the reason is that it's rather difficult to do so. LGT is a saber manufacturer, and you can buy things directly from them, but in order to do that you have to go through AliExpress. Now AliExpress is a vendor site that, if you're not familiar with it, is very similar to Wish in a lot of respects, insofar as it's difficult to navigate. There's a lot of things on there, and it'll take you forever to get a lot of them, and it's sometimes very difficult to understand what it is that you're getting, so it's very easy to get off track and to get something that wasn't what you expected. I'm not a big fan of AliExpress as a vendor site, but it is how LGT distributes. So the main way that LGT actually gets their product out there, because if they just relied on AliExpress, I'm sure they wouldn't be a very big force in the market, and they are. The main way that they get their stuff out there is by being a manufacturer who sells to various distributors. So saber companies pop up. Somebody wants to start selling lightsabers. They set up an account with LGT, they start getting stock from LGT. They can then rebrand that stock, etch it, name it whatever they want to, and sell that stock out of their site as a saber distributor. All right, now a lot of saber distributors are upfront about what they're doing. Places like Vire Sabers and Kyber Cave are upfront that they're selling LGT product. Sometimes saber distributors try to set themselves up as saber manufacturers, and you end up with something like the scandal that happened with DX Sabers, where they were very tight-lipped and misleading about what it was that they were actually selling you. But if you start looking around at like smaller saber manufacturers who haven't been there as long, and you start noticing that a lot of the sabers that they're selling look very similar, you're probably dealing with people who are distributing LGT sabers. So that's what's going on with that. The LGT model is a pretty simple and relatively ingenious model whereby they sell you hilts. You can get a hilt that looks like Obi-Wan, Darth Vader, Luke, whatever, or you can get some more streamlined dueling hilts. Some of the LGT hilts are rather derivative of some of the hilts that you can see in Pox Store or Kybers, or they've got even one that looks like a Kyber light. So they're sometimes derivative, they're sometimes canon, they're sometimes unique, but whatever it is that you buy from them, in parts or in whole, you get this hilt set up, and then you slide a saber core into it, the same basic saber core from saber to saber. Now this is very similar to what happens at Savvy's lightsaber building experience at Disneyland. Okay, you put your hilt together, you design your hilt out of all of the different pieces that they give you, and then you put the same core in it from person to person, pop a crystal in, and you have a custom saber. So that's what LGT does. So I figured that it would be most of value to review the core itself, because strictly speaking, you can get any hilt you want from LGT, or you can get a piece of pipe from the hardware store and drill a couple holes in it, or you can 3D print something on your own. And as long as the holes are in the right spot, you slide, or it's the right diameter inside, you slide this core in it and you have a saber. And that's, I think, where a lot of the strength of this design comes in. So I'm going to be reviewing their core. This hilt right here is one that I 3D printed out of PLA plastic. This blade is from Bendu Armory, so their cores work on other people's blades just fine. The core that's in here, they sell various cores. They have real budget ones that have limited amounts of fonts. They have a little bit better ones. They have baselit ones that have lights or LEDs down here. They have neopixel models that work with neopixel blades. They have eco boards, which are the cheaper boards, and then they have things like Profi boards, which are a little bit more desirable and customizable. All right, so the board contains what you get or what you buy in it, and there's a whole bunch of different types. This board is the cheapest of their neopixel installs, so it is the eco board, and I want to talk about it in terms of the features that it provides, the design that it uses, and the general application, what you can do with it. So let me talk about features first, because that way I don't have to take it out of the Saber just yet. I was rather impressed when I got this in terms of the number of features that this thing offers. A lot of times with budget boards, you end up with 3 or 4 fonts. You end up with fonts that are hard-coded into the board and cannot be changed or edited. Sometimes you end up with pre-programmed colors. So this thing is actually pretty feature-rich for an eco board. And eco stands for economy in this sense. This board runs about $70. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But, or the whole chassis assembly, everything runs about $70. So it's pretty feature-rich for that. It's got a ton of fonts on it. All the fonts on here are smooth swing. So let me cover the fonts first. It's got one button design here. This is a recharge port. The one button here activates everything. So when you get it in a box like this. The box comes with a recharge cable, a screw set, a wrench, and an instruction card, which you're going to need. Alright, so just going through the fonts. In order to get to those, I can hold down the button for a little bit and it'll cycle to the next font. I can tap the button and it'll cycle to the font back. Cycling back is harder than cycling forward because cycling, or just the tap, is more likely to ignite the blade. So let me just show you some of the fonts that are on here.
General Kenobi.
There's 1.
I've been waiting for this day for a long time.
2.
Darth Maul.
3.
Road Commander.
4. 5. 6.
'The Force is with you, young Skywalker.
7.
But you are not a Jedi yet.
I'm Cal Kestis.
8. 9.
Rey Skywalker.
10.
Teensy.
11.
Smooth Jedi.
12.
Smooth Gray.
13.
Smooth Fuzz.
14. We've heard that one.
Smooth Jedi.
We've heard that one. We've heard that one.
I'm Rey.
Ascension.
Okay, I think that was a good one.
Automaticos. Ben Solo. Empress Palpatine. Count Dooku.
Alright, I think we're back to the beginning. I lost track in there somewhere, but I think you get the idea. There's some repetition of the fonts from bank to bank, but there's a boatload of fonts on here. So, each one of these fonts has smooth swing. Now, this isn't hybrid smooth swing, this is classic. No matter how fast I move it, it's still relying on the smooth swing. It has clashes, blaster deflects that I can get to by quick tapping the button. Alright, blade lockup. There we go. Okay, there's a lightning lightning lockup that looks pretty much the same, except it's more localized. Force effects. There we go, that was a force effect. Alright, I get to the force effect by twisting and tapping. Okay, there is a color change. In order to get to the color change, I have to do the same thing as the force effect, which is a twist and hold while the blade's pointed down. And it goes boop boop boop, and then you can cycle through the color change just by rotating the saber. When you get it to where you want it, hold down the button until you get a boop boop boop, and then you're all set to go. Alright. Hold down the button and power it off. So in theory, it's also got a music track selection. It's got mute. It has multi-blaster, which is rather annoying, but basically it turns the clashes into blaster deflects. So it's got a lot of features. And they sell it to you with this little card so that you can figure out where all those features are. You're going to need the card because navigating this board is a little bit difficult. It's less intuitive because there's so much stuff packed into a one-button operation. All right, so let me get into the design of this thing. Take the blade out. So the NeoPixel design on there is a rather chaotic arrangement of pins. There are no accent LEDs on this like there are in Pox Store Sabers or in some others. So without the blade in, there's absolutely no light. All right, but this connection right here, like I said, is universal, so it works with pretty much everybody's sabers. All right, there is a recharge port here. And again, when you buy this thing, it comes with the recharge cable. Okay, there is one button. There are generally two screws. You'll notice that mine only has one. I'll talk about that in just a second. But in order to get the board out, you simply remove these two screws. At which point the button pushes down into the saber. And then the whole thing slides out. Okay, if you're dealing with a saber that is a rather tight fit like this one is, you can actually use a blade. Let's push it out the other direction. Use a blade to push out the chassis. If you try to push it out with your fingers from this end, you might bend or damage the connectors. If you try to push it out from this end, you might bend or damage the speaker. So here it is, the brains of the operation. All right, this takes a removable battery. This is not the battery that came with it, but it takes the same sort of battery that a lot of these do, an 18650. Specifically, I recommend having one that's made for NeoPixel. I think it's a higher draw battery. I'm not real certain what the difference is there, but it's a removable battery. So while you don't necessarily ever have to take it out of the saber because you've got a recharge point, you can take it out and recharge it this way, or if the battery does go bad, you can pop it out and replace the battery. On top here you have a board. Now on the Profi setups, this is a Profi board. This is the Eco board. The Eco board that this thing offers has an SD card that is right between the battery and the board right here. Now the SD card means that I can take the SD card out, plug it into a computer, and change the fonts or the color presets on this, which is pretty nice. All right, especially for, again, an Eco board where a lot of times you're dealing with things that are hard-coded in. All right, so we've got a speaker, which is reasonably loud. You've got the board, the SD card, the battery, button, recharge point, and just so that you can see that, there. That's what happens when you screw it in. The button pops out so that it's flush with the outside of the saber. All right, so this is the design. This thing is 1 inch in diameter, so it's actually the same size as a standard blade. If you want to know whether or not this thing is going to fit in your saber, can you slide a blade all the way through? A lot of times in a lot of like saber forged sabers and such, you can't because there's these little choke points that are smaller than 1 inch. But if you can put a blade all the way through your saber, this thing will fit. The full length of this thing is, I want to say it's about 8 inches. Let's check that against a piece of notebook paper. Yeah, notebook paper is 8.5. This comes up to here, so this is about 8 inches long, probably closer to 9 once you get to the end of the pins. You can secure it in there with a set screw, or you can rely on these things to do that. Now, I mentioned that there's only one of these in mine, and the reason for that is those set screws are attached to little bolts like this that are screwed in down here. If you are too rough with it, or if it gets stuck in the saber at any point, you can lose one of those bolts or break off the plug to it, and it just comes out. You can kind of see it down there. So I'm only able to secure mine with one screw these days, but that's one screw right there. But theoretically, there's two, just something to be careful about. All right, another thing to be careful about on this is that if the fit that you're using on the saber is too tight, there's a chance that when you put it in, it can force the battery one direction or another, and that's going to break the connection. If you break the connection or if the connection becomes weak, it starts doing the same thing that the saber will do if the battery power is low. When the battery power is low on this, it comes on and it's crackly, and then usually the first swing or the first time it gets jostled, your smooth swing cuts out, or the hum cuts out, and all you've got is the smooth swing, and then sometimes it gets stuck on, and it's rather unpredictable. If you're getting all kinds of nonsense like that, either your battery is low power or your battery's connection is bad in the saber itself. The good news is that if the battery connection becomes bad, you can use like a wrench, and you see that little metal connector right there? If you bend that out and bend this one out a little bit, it makes the connection to the battery stronger, and that will sort that. All right, so this is the brains of the operation. So let me talk about application here in terms of what this thing is good for. So, is it a perfect design? No, it's a budget board. It's not a perfect design, but the overall design of it, the versatility of it is rather nice. The fact that, like I said, if you want to get a pipe and cut holes in it, you can have a lightsaber. If you want to 3D print something, you can have a lightsaber. And the reason that this is such a benefit to the market is if you get from one of the saber companies out there, if you get an empty hilt and you try to get it installed, an installation can cost you $400 easily. It can easily be more than the cost of the hilt and the cost of all the parts. All right, cheapest I usually see installations is down around $200 sometimes, but this thing for like $70, you have an installation, you have a ready-to-go saber. So whatever hilt that you're going to put this into, if it'll fit, this is a good way to go for that. And so to get it back in the board, or back in the saber, all you do is push it in, push it up, until the buttons are about where you need them to be. Align it correctly. There we go. Put the screw in to secure it. And then just tighten until the button is about as far out as you want it to be. So for me, about there. All right, and then it's secure in there. It's not going to come out on you. You can put the blade in, you can put the pommel on, and you're ready to go with a fully installed saber. All right, hopefully this review has been of use to you. If it has, join me back for more, and I'll see you next time.